So, as I said, today we're looking at the DFG Quality Mark, and it's something that we launched as part of the recent round of roadshows, but now we want to tell everybody else about it if you didn't get to join us. So, I'm going to go through an introduction to the DFG Quality Mark. And the kind of thinking behind it is, and I'll kind of go through the rationale for this in a minute, that some local authorities have systems in place and processes in place that are a bit like slightly older Beetle, and some have systems and processes in place that are much more like a Porsche GT3, both built on the same kind of initial design and kind of concept, but obviously now very, very different vehicles, and one gets you from A to B much quicker than the other. And so the same applies to DFG services across the country, or local authorities services across the country. And as with everything, it follows a normal distribution or standard distribution, in that half are above average, half are below average, which is how averages work. But also, there are always a kind of minority that are doing grants adaptations really quickly. Got the Porsche GT3, but there are also some that are at the other end of the spectrum that are kind of more the beaten up old Beetle and getting through the process much more slowly. And then everyone else is kind of somewhere between that. And this is the distribution of spend across the country, across local authorities. The median spend compared to allocation is around 80%. So you can see not everybody's spending all of their money. So speed of delivery isn't particularly affected in most places by the amount of allocation or the amount of funding they have. And particularly, we move on to this slide where we've got the distribution of delivery times. So this is from last year's Delta returns. And it shows the delivery times for stages 2 and 3 and 4 in the process. So this is after the OT assessment and recommendation has been done, through to the completion of works. And what this chart is showing us is that the average local authority does those stages 2, 3, and 4 in 223 working days, which is about 10 to 11 months. If we look at the guidance, it gives best practice of around 130 days, which we can see from this chart. Just under 20% of local authorities are hitting that average. So what's kind of the what's happening with the other 80% to not be hitting that kind of best practice target? So as we've seen from the previous slide, it's not necessarily money, because not everybody's spending their full allocation. So what can we do to help those with a Beetle move a little bit closer to those with a Porsche? And that's primarily what the DFG Quality Mark is set up to do. So it's designed as a national standard for the delivery of DFGs. And we're going to go through in this session why we're launching it, how it works, how to get involved, and how we can support you on the journey to hopefully getting the quality mark in the future. And part of why we're launching it is that over the last 10 years or so, the profile of disabled facilities grants within, I think particularly within social care, has increased significantly alongside the budget. So just over 10 years ago, the budget was 220 million across England, and now it's 723 million. And it's now funded by the Department of Health and Social Care, where it used to be funded by Ministry of Housing, as it is now, and I think it was the ODPM back then. And alongside that increase in funding, there are growing expectations on speed and quality. And as we saw from the previous charts, there is significant variation between timescales in different areas. And really, everybody across the country should be getting a more consistent service. So the DFG Quality Mark, as we're launching it now, focuses on those stages 2, 3, and 4 of the process. That's after the OT has made the assessment or recommendation, so that it works consistently for every housing authority across the country, of which there are currently 294. And once local government reorganisation has played out, so we've got unitary authorities or single tier authorities across the country, we will revisit and incorporate stage 1, so it can also apply to every local authority. But we didn't think it was appropriate at this point to have a different one for districts and for unitaries, which would potentially be the case if we included the OT or the kind of the assessment stage 1. So what the quality mark will do is that for those that are delivering a good service, performing well, there will be a badge that recognises the quality of their service. For others, it will give you a clear view of what to do to improve your service and a way to prioritise that improvement process. And for everybody, it will help us to focus on the support that we can provide to help you on that journey. So the DFG Quality Mark, if you haven't been on the roadshows and haven't picked up the packs of cards, it's based on 75 elements, so 75 things that a good, efficient, well-run DFG service must, should, or could do. And those 75 things are split into 8 themes. And the idea is that each of the 75 is in quite simple, clear, practical language, and that they're all quite objective. So it's either a yes or a no rather than a maybe. So we've tried to make them all as objective as we can. And the themes that those 75 items are kind of split into are these. So it started with health and safety. That was the first theme and the first requirements that we put together. And then we started looking at what housing assistance policy should include so that you're using your discretion appropriately. What public information is available so that people know how the DFG works, what they should expect, what would happen if things go wrong, those sort of things. Looking at how you manage contractors and do procurement, how you monitor both kind of cases as they go through the system or through the pipeline, and thinking about how you kind of benchmark some of that as well. Agency service is about the support given to members of the public to make those applications. Strategic and sustainable is links with organisations like housing associations, Better Care Fund, health teams. And sustainable is obviously about making adaptations that are there for the long term and not just ripped out and thrown away at the first opportunity. And the last one is about having a nice, slick way of processing DFG applications. So the cards, I say we've set out each of these 75 on individual cards so that you can see each one individually, which I think as we were developing the quality mark, we kind of had a list of 75 kind of in a long spreadsheet. But actually looking at each one individually, I think gives it its own impetus, which I thought was quite helpful, certainly in terms of improvement and kind of picking out which ones to work on. So each of the cards shows what the requirement is, gives a bit of further context to go with it. And you can see at the bottom, they're grouped into must-dos, should-dos, and there are also some could-dos. So, for example, this is the set of cards for public information. And it's primarily the sort of information that you should have on your website so that people know what to expect, know how to move through the process, know what's going to happen, know what to do if things go wrong, rather than you having to individually explain that to them every time something happens, and to kind of cut down on the number of calls you get as well, so that people are well informed, or as informed as they can be as you go through the process. And one of the reasons for doing this was that we did some work a couple of years ago looking at local authority websites and the DFG pages, and this is an example of I've anonymised it, but this is an example of a current local authority web page and the amount of information it includes about DFGs for residents in that area. And so you don't get told a great deal. So I think somebody in that area would find it quite difficult to know quite what's involved and quite what they need to do and quite what they can expect. But what we also did as part of that piece of work is look at some of the better ones, and we put together a template for a local authority DFG webpage that ticks off all the requirements for the DFG Quality Mark as well. So this is kind of the sort of resource and sort of support we want to provide, so that you can quite easily, assuming you've got the support of your IT teams and web teams, do something that's a lot better for members of the public in terms of having that public information. Next one I want to go through is health and safety, and this was actually the first. I think I mentioned earlier, this was the first section that I started looking at, and it was after I'd visited a local authority and was kind of talking through their processes and procedures with them, and they didn't really understand or adhere to the construction design and management regulations. In fact, one of the technical officers said to me they were too busy to bother with that sort of thing, which given that it's a legal requirement and you could potentially get prosecuted for not complying with it, I thought wasn't particularly good practice. So this is that was one of the instigators for this kind of particular section of the quality mark. And it's not to say that DFGs and adaptations are necessarily the most high risk construction task you can undertake, but there have been cases where people have died as a result of adaptations of one sort or another. I don't think any of these were DFG funded, but probably the most shocking one was the one on the top left there, where a contractor had gone in to do a level access shower and cut out the floorboards ready to fit the former. And this guy fell through the floor, and unfortunately to his death. So it is there are inherent risks with any type of construction project, and so the quality mark cards around health and safety are based on these 10 things that you need to know, from what the CDM regulations are all about, who's the client, who are the designers and what they need to do, what contractors need to do, the pre-construction information you need to provide, the construction phase plan that you need to make sure that the contractors provided, understand what you need to do in asbestos, particularly in buildings or homes built before 2000, when you need to notify the HSC, what the health and safety file is at the end of the project, and also what you need to do if there's a high-risk, high-rise building. So I just wanted to go through those quickly, because I say it is a really key, and it was the first part of the quality mark that I put together. So the construction, or CDM regs, are the construction design and management regulations, and the current set are from 2015, although they did come out in the 90s. And that they were introduced because back in the 70s and 80s, there was a person died every day on a building site in the UK. And the idea was to put together some regulations that help to design out many of those risks, so that all that work could be done in a much safer way and have significantly reduced casualties and fatalities. And the CDM regs apply from any construction work. So from fitting a grab rail through to building HS2, CDM regs apply. But it's important to say it is proportional. So you'd obviously need a lot less documentation for fitting a grab rail than you would for building HS2. But in any case, it is a legal requirement to comply with the CDM regs. And there are three key roles within the CDM regs. Those are client, designer, and contractor. So the contractor very neatly maps across to the contractor in a triangle of key actors in the DFG process. The design is usually carried out by the local authority or home improvement agency. So then who is the client? And client responsibilities depends upon who is primarily in control of the work. So who's doing the design, who's paying the money, who's deciding when it will be done, those sort of things. And if you're the client, then you have those responsibilities. And I think sometimes in the past it's been assumed that because contractually it's often the householder or the applicant who has the contract with the contractor, that they would be a domestic client. But if there's an agency service supporting them through the process, doing the design, getting the quotes, arranging the start on site, then it would be your local authority team or your home improvement agency or the client. And it's only a domestic client if that client is in control of the process, managing their own project, and the local authority's route or role is only administering the grant. So for the vast majority of DFGs, the council will be the client, unless you've got an external HIA, and that contractual relationship is irrelevant to who's the client under CDM. And so the client as the council, or the council as the client, will be responsible for providing the pre-construction information and ensuring that contractors and designers comply with their duties as well. So usually looks like that. Local authority or home improvement agency is both the client and the designer. And as a designer, usually an architect or technical officer, but the OT may have design input as well. But whoever is involved in the design must be thinking about eliminating or reducing foreseeable risks that might arise either while the project on site and being built, or may occur afterwards, either in terms of maintenance or use of the building. So things from slip resistance on the floor through to whether somebody can reach and change a light bulb or clean out the drain will be part of thinking about potential of foreseeable risks. Contractor responsibilities. So contractor must plan, manage and monitor construction works, and they must also provide information about risks for health and safety of their workers. So they must keep their workers safe. The designer or the client will provide the pre-construction information. So this is a list of this sort of thing that the contractor would need to know to understand how to do the job safely. So it might also include things like whether the client's got asthma, for example, and that they need to take precautions with dust and the like. And also if the client's got a big dog that might escape and bite them, that sort of thing you would also include within your pre-construction information. And then from that, your contractor or principal contractor, if you've got more than one, puts together the construction phase plan that would have things like the key date, site rules, where the skip's going to go, if the toilet can be used, those sort of things, so that the whole project runs as smoothly and as safely as possible. It's a legal requirement for technical officers to have annual training, annual asbestos awareness training, so they understand when asbestos is likely to be found and where it's likely to be found in a building, which for most buildings built before the turn of the century, you're quite likely to have asbestos somewhere in the property. Artex, for example, quite often includes asbestos. And throughout, it's about identifying risks. You can leave asbestos if you're not going to disturb it, but if it's going to be disturbed, then you need to have professionals in who will safely remove it, and that should be included in your DFG costs if required. Make sure you've got asbestos surveys done before the works start, and checking that the contractors have completed it and that you're kind of happy that that's been done is another one of the key requirements. And aware of one local authority that hadn't checked robust checks that contractors had done that work and had been found out by the HSE. So we do have health and safety training available on the website, including an Irish approved asbestos awareness course if you need that for your technical officers every year. Number 8 is knowing when to notify HSE of a project. So that's for projects that last more than 30 days with 20 plus workers or 500 plus person days. So basically, if you've got an extension or you're building an extension, traditional build extension, you should notify the HSE that that's on site. I'm not aware of the HSE ever visiting a DFG extension. I'm sure they've got more hazardous sites to look at, but it is a legal requirement to notify them for those kind of slightly larger projects. And then the health and safety file is probably the last requirement of CDM, which is basically a file of information that you hand over to the applicant or homeowner at the end of the job, usually kind of a hard ring binder with things like as-built drawings, test certificates, building reg certificates, manufacturer's instructions, warranties, etc. And then, as I mentioned, the final bit is something that came in with the Building Safety Act in response to the tragedy at Grenfell, and it brings in stricter regulations for doing modifications and works in high-rise buildings. So typically a bathroom adaptation would trigger the additional permissions from the building safety regulator that can take quite a while to get through the process. But again, it's a legal requirement that you're aware of that and follow those new regulations. So those kind of the 10 things that are part of the health and safety section, and I think all those are must-dos, and that you have to legally comply with when you're delivering DFGs. In terms of contractors and procurement, there's a set of cards that look at different aspects of contractors and procurement. And 4 of those will be covered if you're using the home adaptations installer network.